Welcome to part 2 of the Native American Crisis video series that I am making. If you have not checked out part 1, I highly recommend that you do so. I'm going to jump right into it and discuss a crisis that essentially impacts around 3 of the other crises that we already discussed. And that crisis is poverty. Poverty is an awful thing, and nobody in their right mind would dispute this. It makes it harder for families to afford basic things such as electricity, food, and education. A whopping nearly 33% of all Native Americans on reservations are suffering from poverty with incomes of only around $20,000 a year or less. This poverty rate is nearly double the average for the rest of the country. This has resulted in a terrible reality where Native reservations in the United States have a tendency to look like third world countries in some areas due to the immense poverty and thus lack of proper upkeep. Buildings with families living in them are rotting and breaking down, children not being able to be provided with proper education because most have to be sent off reservation to get education, since only around 1 in 5 reservations offer elementary and high school options. So how did this problem get so bad, and why has it not been fixed? Reservation poverty got so bad simply because there is a lack of paying jobs within reservations. Most jobs include land management, convenience/gas store workers, and casinos. These sources of revenue fail to generate a sufficient amount of money for most natives to live off of, and thus they suffer in the bitterness of poverty. Despite the popular belief that native reservations do receive subsidies from the government, that only occurs in really rare situations and is usually only just a one-off payment for things such as land disputes.
I'm here at Wheatfield Lake in the Navajo Nation. It's pretty nice right now. It's iced over. I think this is a perfect opportunity to talk about education, since we just passed Dene College in the small native town of Tseli just a while ago. So yes, the Navajo Nation does have big established colleges, but they do not have crucial funding needed to be able to fund really important curriculum that is needed in order to advance students' minds and abilities to proceed in the workforce later on in life. And that all stems back to the poverty problem, and it all stems back to the government's treatment of native reservations to this day. Welcome to Monument Valley. We're still in the Navajo Nation currently, and this is one of the spots where they rake in a lot of their tourist dollars. Sadly, COVID-19 has staggered a lot of that. Poverty is a big problem in the Navajo Nation, and a lot of people suffer through it, with the average family only raking in around $30,000 to $40,000 a year, which does not cut it by American living standards. And it does not help the fact that COVID-19 is stopping people from seeing these beautiful sights and having to pay for it.
Native governments usually do not have the money to be able to spend on big projects like big construction projects that employ a lot of people and generate a lot of money for the community. Usually they're left with a small sum of money that they have to put into already existing projects, which in most cases is a casino. And when you put a lot of money into casinos for expanding it or whatever may have you, only around 20 or 30 people are hired as a result of that, and that does not cut it at all. And a large part of the reason why native governments can't expand or produce anything economically or create a working and functioning and blossoming economy is because of the government. The government has put a lot of red tape on reservations because technically the government owns all reservations. So there's a lot of red tape when it comes to establishing a plot of land and establishing a business, and entrepreneurship just runs dead in these areas where the government has a lot of the control and people are not able to, for instance, mortgage a house or get out a loan and make a payment on a building space in order to create a business. So the government has essentially stagnated a reservation's progress to be able to blossom economically. And this is far from the only thing that the government has done to screw Native Americans over. And we'll continue talking about that as we talk about healthcare.
We're here in a beautiful place in the Navajo Nation. I have the Painted Desert behind me, followed by these towering red rock cliffs leading up to these upper plateaus that are full of forest. And I'd like to just take a moment to talk about the poverty that many in the Navajo Nation face. I mean, it's brutal poverty. I I'd love to show you guys what I'm seeing right now, but I don't want to put anyone on blast, but there is some essentially shacks around here is what people are living in, and it's quite tragic. People can't afford higher education, they can't afford good healthy food, they can't afford good living conditions, good transportation, and that's largely because they are stuck in a loop of poverty that the government has put them in by not allowing them to really establish business on their land. But despite all that, there is still beauty to be found here. I'm just hoping we can bring that beauty to the homes of the natives.
Currently, around 15% of Native Americans are living without any form of health insurance. This is a terrifying percentage considering the fact that Native Americans are more likely to suffer from a multitude of issues, some of which include alcoholism, which is 6.6 times higher than the national average, injuries and accidents 2.5 times higher, liver disease 4.6 times higher, flu rates nearly 2 times higher, diabetes 3.2 times higher, and suicide rates for teens is nearly double that of the suicide rates for white teens. Around 19% of Native Americans suffer from severe mental health issues, most of which are cases of major depressive disorder. Native American youths tend to start abusing alcohol and drugs earlier on and more frequently than the rest of the nation, and natives experience mental distress and anxiety at a rate of 2.5 times higher than the national average. Now, I know I just threw a lot of statistics at you, but that barely even scratches the surface of what natives face from a health perspective. Many natives are not able to afford proper treatments or health care and thus are forced to go to under-equipped clinics or receive no medical attention at all. Much like the water crisis, some natives must drive for several miles in order to get to some sort of medical facility. For those going to medical facilities on reservations, there is a slim chance of that facility having an emergency room, or basic urgent care facilities, or basic machines such as CAT scan machines and MRI machines. Even with all the help that natives get from organizations such as the Indian Health Services, they only have access to around $2,800 per person, which is nearly $5,000 less than what it is nationally. Due to this healthcare problem, many natives are actually trying to flee reservations that they have called their homes for years, in order to get access to the better health care that's afforded to many Americans. The IHS is simply not cutting it. Many of them are trapped by a cycle of poverty and are not able to get off the reservation to obtain this better health care, so a lot of them have to deal with the substandard health care that is afforded to them. And because the health care is so bad on some of these reservations, it has resulted in the lifespan of many Native Americans being around 6 years lower than the national average. 6 years lower. That might not seem like a big deal to most people, but 6 years is a large amount of time, and for that to just be chipped away simply because the federal government cannot afford Native reservations the resources to be able to generate decent urgent cares and emergency cares, it's just appalling. And it needs to be solved. And it all kind of ties back into the poverty crisis. Native Americans are lacking money because they are not able to expand their economies, and this is taking a huge toll not only on their wealth, but on their health. While the government continuously stifles Native Americans' abilities to be able to generate any sort of economic gain from their land, they will gladly do it themselves, but they won't let the natives benefit from it. Recently, in 2017, the Bears Ears National Monument, a very sacred territory for many native groups, was reduced in size by around 1 million acres to pave way for American industry. None of this is going to benefit native communities or give back to them economically. And this is just one of many instances in which the government has done something like this. This dates back for hundreds of years. Reservations are already meager sums of land from what the natives used to have, and we still continue to chip away at this land today. Allow me to bring up the Black Hills incident. Back in the 19th century, anti-Semitism was largely used to push Native Americans off of a large majority of the land that they held as sacred. Many of those trying to take the land claimed that the natives did not know how to use the land properly or generate wealth from the land. This led to many instances in which the land was simply overtaken by white settlers who went to work swiftly desecrating many holy sites. A prime example of this is the Black Hills in South Dakota. These beautiful hills contain vast forest land and many geologic wonders, all of which the natives that used to inhabit the area found of the utmost importance to their religious practices. And although tribes such as the Lakota fought very hard in battles such as the Battle of Little Bighorn, where leaders such as Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse went to work in fending off the white settlers' progression, they eventually failed in their actions, and in the late 1800s, industrialization started creeping closer to the hills, and anti-Semitism towards the natives that lived there increased. The hills were overtaken and industrialized in order to benefit the U.S. economy, and the natives that lived there were forced off the land or else they faced prosecution. Today, many of the sites that natives have held sacred in the past are now farmlands, industrial centers, and mining operations, such as this one. What little the natives do have left is constantly under threat by the ever-increasing industry of the U.S.
Right now, I'm in the Navajo Nation. We're actually doing a bit of a tour around, and I just want to talk a little bit about the landscape and what it means to the natives. Right behind me is Agathla Peak. It's 1,400 feet above its surroundings, and it's an ancient plug volcano. Landscape features such as this hold significant value to the native people. Think of it as like a church for Christians or a mosque for Muslims. This area holds great significance, and many ceremonies and sacred things are done around this mountain in order to commemorate the gods that the natives hold sacred. It's very important that everyone who takes in the beauty of these landscapes keeps their distance, respects the land, and understands that this holds great significance to the people who inhabit it.
Imagine, if you can, the U.S. government comes into a small town and destroys a local church that is held very sacred by many people in the local community. Everyone would be up in arms. It'd be the news story of the day. Headlines would be everywhere, and everyone would be up in arms. A place that represents religious freedom had been destroyed. So why is it that when the government goes into native lands and decides to start cookie-cutting out land that they can use to industrialize, that little to no one bats an eye? This land is sacred to these people. The land itself is like a church that many natives practice holy rituals on, and taking that land for them and industrializing it is tantamount to destroying an actual literal church. So, why do we let it happen? Why does it fly under the radar? Why does little to no one know about the crises that are going on? At this point, you were probably a little pissed off. I was definitely pissed off reading about a lot of this. So you're probably wondering now, what can be done?
Hey everybody, I'm here at the Window Rock. I just wanted to show this beautiful thing off because it's what the capital of the Navajo Nation was named after. Freaking phenomenal here. I just want to take a moment just to do a little bit of a wrap up. Thank you guys for watching this video. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. But most importantly, I want to call attention to what you can do and give a little brief summary of it.
1. You can volunteer on reservations, doing activities such as building, construction, helping folks receive water, volunteering at health clinics, and volunteering to teach the youth. Secondly, you could donate. Native reservations are in dire need of money. They're struggling with a lot of poverty issues, and if you could donate to your local reservation, that would mean the world. 3, you could buy Native American goods. Native Americans have plenty of pop-up shops, they have casinos, they have local businesses in some reservations. Support these businesses, give back to the community, and help the economy grow. 4th, and most importantly, spread the word. You need to spread the word. This issue has flown under the surface for way too long, and more people need to know about the crises that Native Americans are facing. Spread the word, share this video, make sure more people know that Native Americans are suffering. What can the federal government do? Well, the federal government can stop desecrating holy lands and holy sites and start giving back to the Native Americans instead of constantly taking away. I talked to a Native American gentleman recently, and I think one thing he said to me very much stood out. I asked him, what can the federal government do for Native Americans? And he simply said they can honor their promises. And I couldn't agree with him more. So, secondly, the federal government could give the Native American reservations some sort of stimulus in order to fuel up their economy that is currently suffering. And along with this stimulus, they need to take away all that red tape. They need to give Native Americans more sovereignty and allow more natives to privately own their land so that they can actually economically gain from it without having to go through all these weird and terrible processes that slows them down from generating wealth. And fourth, the federal government simply needs to acknowledge the fact that Native reservations need to have a better judicial system. Currently, the judicial system in Native reservations is stifled. They're only allowed to sentence people up to 3 years, which allows crimes like sexual assault and rape to run rampant. You need to give them more judicial freedom so they can put these criminals where they belong, which is behind bars. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you learned something. I know I definitely did. Native Americans are suffering in this country, and it is a damn shame. But there is something you can do about it, and I truly hope that you do. I hope this video encourages you to take action, and I hope you share this video with others. I plan on making more projects similar to this and diving further into the issues that Native Americans face, but for now, I definitely appreciate you viewing this 2-part series, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much for watching this video.